Hi, Patty Willardsen here at 3D Brows Academy. Today we're going to be talking about how to identify what needle you want to use, what the different numbers mean, when to use that needle for what person, and how to use the best needles while keeping your costs down. When you're first getting started in this industry, there are so many different needles to choose from that it can feel a little bit overwhelming. You've got your needles that come preloaded, you've got your needles that you load into your own hand tool, you've got multiple different choices, whether it's a U shape or a curved, a hard needle or a flex needle. So I just want to take some time and break these all down for you so you can better understand when to choose what needle for what. The first thing that I look for when I have a client come in and I'm doing my consultation is I'm looking at their actual brow hairs. Not their skin texture first, because that can be a little bit misleading. You may look at somebody and think, oh, they've got perfect skin, I'm gonna use a tiny needle and get right into this, and then their skin's actually really rough and you need to choose a different needle. So that's not actually the first thing I look at. What I'm looking for is their texture, the thickness of their actual brow hairs. So if their brow hairs are really thin, fine, maybe really sparse, I'm going for my thinner needle. That's what I'm thinking in my head. If they're really thick and coarse, I'm going for my thicker needle. After that, once I get in and try the needle on their skin, if it feels good, I'll stick with it. If it doesn't, if it feels like I'm not getting in because then the skin's just too thick, too oily, too coarse, then I'll choose a different needle. What I want to do first is I want to go over what the different numbers mean that you see when you order them. You're going to go onto every website, whether it's my website, a different tattoo website, wherever you're buying your needles. What are these numbers that you're looking at? The first number that you're gonna see is the actual number of needles in the configuration. That doesn't matter if it's a U blade or a curved blade. Okay, so let me give you an example of some numbers that we use here that you might see. So 16, you might see a number 16. You might see a number 12, or let's do the 14 first. Number 14, number 12, and number 11. Another one we use here too is the number 7. So all of these numbers, what that means is that's how many needles are in my actual configuration. The next number that you're gonna see is going to have a 0 point something, 0.25, 0.20. What this number is, it's the actual thickness of the needle. Okay, this is the most important part. You're gonna see a 0.25. I gave you a little demonstration here. It's your thicker stroke. You're gonna choose this one for your coarser hair. Then you have your 0.20. This is your middle guy. You don't know if the hair is super thin, you can't identify if it's really coarse. This is gonna be your go-to. And then you've got, which tends to be my favorite one, your 0.18. This one is for that really fine baby hairs, very thin hair. So the first thing that I'm looking at for my clients is I want to try to match my stroke up with their hair texture. There is another one on the market right now. It's a 0.16. It's actually not my favorite needle because I feel like you have to hit the stroke so many times to even get it to show up. So the smallest one I like to use is a 0.18. There's actually even a 0.30. I don't like that one either. I feel like it's too thick of a stroke. So these right here, your 2.5 to your 18, these are my go-tos. Let's talk about flex versus hard. So when you go to order, you're gonna see the number, right? We've already talked about that. That's how many needles are in the actual configuration. Then you're gonna see the thickness of the needle. It's a 0.16, 0.20, 0.25. Then you're gonna see it's either a flex or a hard. So a flex, you're gonna notice, has that little white or black. It's a plastic casing that gives it some flex. Then you have your hards, okay? Your hard blades, they come in a metal casing. There is no flex. I don't love these. I feel like they don't give me the curve that I need. A little bit more like a razor blade. I tend to go for a flex, but does that make it wrong if you like to use a hard? No, that's totally fine. We each are gonna find things that we like and that we don't like. Let's talk about the difference between a U blade and a curved blade. Now, a U blade looks like this, right? So let's just say that there's 21 needles in this configuration and they're in the shape of a U. Now, technically, you're not really supposed to use the very tip of the U blade because it's going to give you a little bit of a jaggedy healed result. It's gonna look like it kind of skipped lines a little bit. So when you're using the U-blade, you load it up so that you're actually using this side of the U-blade. This side you don't touch. So now watch this. If you were to take and erase the side that you do not touch, it turns into a curved blade. For me, it's easier to hit my strokes and stay straight up and down with a curved blade than it is a U-blade. And I'm really using the same needles that I would if I were using my U-blade. It really comes down to what you're comfortable with, what your healed results are best with, and really what you were taught with. Let's just recap that really quick and then I'll go over some of the other needles. The first number that you see is the actual number of needles in the configuration. The second number that you see is the thickness, okay? Now, you'll notice that my 12 and my 14, okay? My 12 needle actually looks way bigger than my 14 needle, which is weird. If there's 14 needles, shouldn't it look better than, or bigger, sorry, than my 12? So the diameter of my 14 is a 0.18. My 12 is a 0.25, but you'll see that my 12 actually looks a lot bigger than my 14, and that's why. When you're gonna go order these needles, you're gonna have a variety of options that you can choose from. I personally like to be able to load my own. I like to choose the angle that I'm gonna have. So I use this tool and I like to load my own needles into it. That way, if I want it more straight up and down or more tilted or more sticking out, I can play with that. I also can keep my costs down while using my best needles by using one hand tool, and maybe I'm gonna load up 3 or 4 different needles in that one session to this one hand tool, and then you can just toss this whole thing. This will be your single use. Your other options are a little bit more pricey. They come preloaded. So you can choose what needle you want. It's gonna say, I'll give you an example right here. The back of this box says 16 curved nano, and what nano means, you guys, a lot of people get really caught up on this nano blade. Nano is another term for 0.18. It's that millimeter size, it's tiny, okay? It's the same one that we were just talking about here. Let's say I grab my 0.18 and I'm going to cut in and I'm like, I am not even getting into this skin. I need a saw to get into this. Well, then I'm not gonna fight it. I'm gonna load up, I'm gonna take my hand tool, twist out my needle, put in my thicker needle, right? And start blading with that. That way my cost is staying down. I'm spending $5 on this, $2 on this, and I'm using, so let's say I use 3 needles that one session, $6, 5. So I'm into this $11. But if I use the ones that come preloaded and I need to use 3 different needles, I'm into my procedure $36, okay? These are a little bit more expensive. So that's why I like to be able to load my own and use as many needles as I need to in that one session.